I was very privileged to lead a healthy and carefree lifestyle. I always enjoyed doing things outdoors like hiking, camping, snowboarding, and mountain biking. But in January of last year, all of that came to a very abrupt and unexpected halt. I wasn't feeling well for about a week, and with symptoms only worsening, my wife Ash, she took me to the local ER. We had no idea at that time that I'd be hospitalized for the next 3.5 months, the majority of which I was in critical condition. It was nearly impossible for me to be awake during this time because my body was in such a critical state. I was in a drug-induced coma for about 1.5 months while doctors worked around the clock to try to save my life. While I was still in a coma, the doctors broke the news to Ash that my only chance at survival would be to receive a double lung transplant.
My name, of course, is Ashley Adams. This was not previously my name until I married this medical anomaly bedside in the ICU on March 20th, 2015. There are many events that led up to this miraculous day. When Bobby was first admitted to the hospital, he was rather quickly intubated and placed on a ventilator for life support. His lungs were failing fast. The cause of his lung failure was unexpected and very much unknown. He was diagnosed eventually with acute interstitial pneumonia and ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and was placed on ECMO, an additional form of life support, which oxygenates the blood. I felt like I was living a nightmare. Nothing seemed real. I have a strong feeling that many of you know what I'm talking about. Within a few days of being informed about the need for Bobby to receive a transplant, a social worker at the hospital told me about the Gift of Life family house and that I could stay here. I didn't know much about the house at the time, but I knew I was grateful to not have to pay thousands of dollars for a hotel room in the city with my mom or sleep on a friend's couch anymore. The house was a very affordable alternative. What I quickly learned is that besides not having to worry about the expense of lodging, the family house provided me with so much more. I was able to enjoy hot meals cooked by people who really wanted to help, receive rides to and from the hospital, and meet some amazing people who understood the frightening reality of what I was dealing with, including house guests, volunteers, and staff. Our families were also more at ease knowing that I was being taken care of.
While I was undergoing surgery, which doctors hoped would allow me to wake from the coma without sacrificing my life, while I was experiencing withdrawal from the many drugs that I was on at that time, while I was undergoing nonstop testing and many types of therapies, and while I was slowly learning what was actually the reality of our situation, Ash was by my side every single day, and I was happier knowing that she had somewhere close and safe to stay. As it turned out, she and her mom attended the president's reception last year as guests staying at the family house.
The president's reception took place the same day that Bobby was finally listed for lung transplant last year. I was feeling elated but also fearful. He was still in extremely critical condition. We were racing the clock with his lung failure and ECMO therapy. It's only indicated that 8 weeks is the typical length of time for someone to receive ECMO therapy without major complications. At this time, he was already at 7.5 weeks. I thought to myself, would he be able to receive a transplant before something else went wrong? That evening at the president's reception, I spoke with one of the volunteers, George, and his wife, Sue. George was the first volunteer I had met at the family house when he drove me to the hospital one morning. I told them that Bobby and I planned to get married sooner than our previously planned November wedding right in the hospital.
Amazingly, George and Sue had a friend who happened to be a judge in the city of Philadelphia, and they were more than willing to ask her if she would marry us in the hospital. Only 2 days later, on the first day of spring, Judge Thompson of City Hall, she drove to the hospital in a snowstorm to marry us. Shortly before our wedding ceremony, a doctor came into my hospital room to give us news that just didn't seem real. She told us that they had a prospective donor.
We cried many tears of pure joy. I had never felt that type of happiness and hopefulness before. I thought to myself about how terrible everything had been for the past couple of months, and for two such miraculous things to happen in one day, it seemed to me a sign that everything would be okay after all. As some of you know, many others awaiting transplant are called for dry runs or false alarms, and it takes many attempts and much anguish before a proper match is finally made. We were extremely fortunate not to have that. There was a donor 2 days after he was listed, and the same day we were married, he received his double lung transplant. Everything went as smoothly as it could have. After everything that happened, we couldn't have been happier with how positive that day was and how amazing and selfless Bobby's donor and their family was to make such a heroic decision and allow for Bobby's life-saving transplant.
So I now had my new bride, I had new lungs, and my new life. But it was still a really long road back to normalcy. It took very intense therapy, including physical, occupational, recreational, and speech therapies. I had to relearn how to stand and walk. I had to relearn how to talk. I even had to relearn how to swallow and eat. I even had to learn how to do, the mundane daily things that we do in life, like folding laundry, before I could be more independent. All of this was necessary before I could go home and get back to enjoying my life. While all of this went on, Ash remained at the family house until I was discharged from the hospital on May 7th, only 2 days before my birthday.
To see the relief on his face upon pulling up to our home was one I won't forget. I loved watching him soak in the comfort of our surroundings, enjoying everything he was seeing. We were home. 6 months later, we were able to have the wedding celebration we originally planned, except we had so much more to celebrate.
So it's now been almost a year. I've been back to work for about a month and a half now. Grateful for a little more normalcy, and we've been enjoying many of the things that we still love to do. As a matter of fact, last week we started running again in preparation for the Donor Dash.
Yes.
For our team, Thunderlungs. Needless to say, Ash and I are so very grateful for my donor and his or her family. We're also indescribably grateful for the family house and how positively it has affected the outcome of our situation. Without the family house, it would have been very difficult for Ash to be with me every single day, both financially and logistically. Without her unyielding emotional support and care, I wouldn't be as well off as I am today, guaranteed. And without the support and the positive environment of the family house, Ash wouldn't have been as available and emotionally present for me while I was in the hospital. The family house truly is a home away from home. Thank you.